Rory Gnevig, when the presidents of our universities speak out, I think we should listen. These are people who are not prone to negative hyperbole. In fact, they have the important task of putting the best foot forward when marketing their university, their college, nationally and internationally. So when the president of UCD warns that the sector is at risk, and the provost of Trinity College warns of a quiet and gradual decline, and the chair of the governing authority of UCC says that the viability of Irish universities is under threat, we should be alarmed. And when we hear those concerns echoed in support of editorials in the Irish Times, the Examiner, the Business Post, we can be reassured that it's more than just the usual pre-budget posturing. So looking at this year's budget, as the Irish University Association has observed, there's much to welcome. Those of us who can remember the Castles report and the saga since then will realise that there's something monumental really in the government at long last introducing a multi-annual approach to core funding, while also addressing the ludicrous situation of not fully funding our universities to cover pay inflation driven by public sector pay awards. And the increase in the PhD stipend is also good news. Postgraduate study and poverty should never have to walk hand in hand. So credit where credit is due. But there is a problem. The government itself acknowledged in 2022 that this sector is underfunded by 307 million per annum in its core funding needs. That means that between 2022 and 2029 inclusive, there remains, even after Tuesday's budget, a 1.3 billion shortfall in core funding for the sector. In fact, the figures announced on Tuesday are a public admission that the 307 million will not really ever be bridged. When funding the Future was launched, we were told by the then Minister Harris that it would settle the question on higher education funding, and I quote him. It was much trumpeted and much heralded, but it now seems that it would have been far more honest of him to have called that document Funding the Distant Future, based on figures from the distant past. For a country that prides itself on education, we have a strange way of showing it. Now, there is still hope that the yet-to-be-announced supplementary budget will deliver the 72 million or so needed to cover unfunded pay awards. And I acknowledge what has been addressed for 2025 going forward in terms of pay increases, but there remains that underfunding of previous years in respect of pay awards. And we should also resent that universities are being forced to justify themselves on the basis of their economic worth. President Higgins has spoken eloquently about the danger of this and where it can lead with, in his words, the quiet capture of universities overtly or covertly by powerful elites and corporate interests. So universities, and I'll finish and thank you, are to be valued for much more than a utilitarian contribution to the economy, positive that is, but for being a cornerstone and a foundation of an open and democratic and learned society. So while I welcome what's positive in the budget, our universities will not be able to retire the begging bowl just yet, and at a time of plenty in our public coffers, that is really a shame. And I would ask for a debate on that particular issue as soon as possible in this House.